Actually, also the timer, and so I'll be running that. I'll give you a little wave, kind of coming on the 10-second. Okay. It does say that there will be a bell that rings, but I couldn't find a good bell. It was like all these galaxy sounds, and I'm like, I just want an old school bell. But so we'll do the wave. Following that, we will hopefully have some questions, like ability to mill afterwards, after their closing remarks, and then some milling time. So the idea is we're going to stay on time so that we're done by 7:30 after their 2-minute closing remarks and give them an opportunity to just be in the room. And then we will be able to herd everybody out before DTSS kicks us out. We kindly ask that everyone remain respectful throughout the evening and hold your applause until the end of the forum, other than earlier. You didn't know. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's discussion, Dee Conklin.
You can applaud. Thank you very much, Rhiannon. My name is Dee Conklin. For those of you who don't know me, I am the owner of Palliser Printing and Signs. If you haven't been down to my new shop, do come down and see us. It's really cool. So good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here and moderate this evening's forum. To reiterate, this is a forum and not a debate. So we won't be debating the answers that each of these candidates give, but it gives you an opportunity at the end, if you have questions about it, to certainly come up and talk to each and every one of you. Would be wonderful. We randomly drew names, as Rhiannon mentioned, for opening and closing remarks. We also drew for the first question and will rotate through the table moving forward. Just a reminder to all the candidates, as Rhiannon said, you will have 2 minutes for your opening and closing, and then 1 minute to respond to each question. All right. So without further ado, let's start with Calvin.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming tonight. So I chose to run for office because my entire life I have watched as the climate crisis has continued to get worse. Every year, climate disasters like heat domes, atmospheric rivers, and wildfires devastate our communities, and more records continue to get broken. 2023 was the hottest year on record and BC's worst wildfire season in recorded history. Many people think of the climate crisis as an environmental issue, which it is, but in reality, it is so much more than that. Climate disasters are costing our economy billions of dollars every year. In 2021 alone, up to $17 billion in damages, and climate change is raising the cost of everything from food to home insurance prices. We live in a world where there are millions of premature deaths every year because of air pollution from burning fossil fuels, not to mention the health impacts of breathing in wildfire smoke, exacerbated by climate change. People's mental health is also suffering, in particular youth. More and more people are suffering from climate grief and ecological anxiety because of the uncertainty in the future that they are going to inherit in this world. Our way of life is also at threat. There were farmers in Abbotsford in 2021 that lost all of their livestock because of the atmospheric river. And salmon, one of the most culturally, ecologically, and economically important species in BC, are at risk because they can't survive in warmer water temperatures. So the climate crisis is an environmental issue, but it is also an economic issue, a public health issue, a mental health issue, a cultural issue, and most importantly, a human issue. We need more people in office to understand the science and urgency of the situation and are willing to act accordingly, and that's why I'm here tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you. I had the great privilege to grow up on the land of the Secwepemc, the Shuswap, and the Ikiskanook, because I went to kindergarten in Golden, moved to Nicholson in grade 1, and spent the rest of my life in Windermere, where my father was transferred. I graduated from DTSS and went off to get some education and got a teaching degree. However, it was the 1990s and there were no jobs. And I sent applications out to Estevan, Saskatchewan and Churchill, Manitoba and heard nothing back. So I came home and went back to my waitressing job at Myrtles on Main, and the local French teacher resigned. And I had the unbelievable fortunate to be able to come back to to work in my own hometown, in my old high school with my old high school teachers, something I've been forever grateful for. I brought my husband back. He opened up an electrical company, and we built a house, and we had some children. And then, as anyone who's had parents know, time just blurred at that point. And suddenly 30 years had gone by, and I just retired from teaching in June. One of the most rewarding roles of a teacher is to be an advocate for students, to ensure they have everything they need to succeed. And I think that being an MLA is very similar. My job will be to advocate for you and your communities, to ensure that we can use the resources we have in our community for our communities to be able to thrive into the future. I know we have unique challenges here, and I want to be part of the solutions. My dream is that all of our children can live and enjoy their lives on this territory as much as I have. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. These forums are very important to have you come out and listen to us as we're asking for your vote. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to our moderators and everybody who organized the evening. My name is Scott McInnes, and I'm a high school teacher. I'm not a politician. I don't need a job. Actually, I miss my job more than I thought I was going to when I started this journey. And I most certainly don't need to be away from my family, potentially for months on end, if elected. I'm doing this because I know how important strong rural leadership is in the province of British Columbia. I'm doing this for all of you and the 35,000 other people who live in Columbia River Revelstoke to make sure that we get our fair share of the pie in decisions that are made in Victoria. I want to make no mistake about it, folks. Our province is in a state of crisis on multiple fronts: healthcare, housing, toxic drugs, affordability, domestic food production, and many, many more. What I'm going to present to you tonight is a plan that's common sense, that's not extreme, and I think that's attractive no matter where you sit on the political spectrum. I'm asking for you to listen carefully, and hopefully you can buy in to what the Conservative Party of BC is proposing as a new direction forward. I want to thank you all again for being here. It's a great pleasure.
And those are your candidates for tonight. So now we have question number 1. And remember that they were given about 4 of these questions beforehand, and then 2 that are going to be surprise questions, which they handle no trouble whatsoever. So, Scott, you will be starting, and if I'm not mistaken, the question will be up on the screen. What is your vision for strengthening and improving our healthcare system, provincially and locally?
Thank you for the question. It's a very important one, and one that I field as I travel throughout the riding. Our healthcare system is on the verge of collapse in this province. So far this year, we've had over 300 emergency room closures across British Columbia. This is totally unacceptable. I'm going to do 2 things as your MLA here in Columbia River Revelstoke. First of all, I'm going to work my tail off to try and get access back to Alberta Health for critical and acute care patients. I also want to make it clear that this is not an Alberta Health problem. This is an Adrian Dix problem. He's the one that's closed the door on allowing access for people to Alberta Health. It's unreasonable for somebody in Kimberley or Invermere in February who's in their 80s to have to drive to Kelowna to receive those services. The second thing I've been advocating for, and I'm going to continue for, is the Provincial Rural Retention Incentive for healthcare workers within the riding who do not receive that. Thank you.
Yeah, so the BC Greens really need to stress that right now we are putting a lot of money into supporting more bureaucracies around healthcare. We have 7 health authorities in the province with 64 vice presidents, and we need to actually make sure that we're supporting frontline healthcare workers instead of more administrations. And it's important that we not move towards a private healthcare system as well, like Alberta is, because healthcare is for everyone, regardless of if they can afford it or not. The BC Greens are proposing putting community health centers in every riding in the province, where physicians can work alongside dietitians, psychologists, and physiotherapists. This way, it's easier for people to get referrals, and the administrative burden is then placed on administrative professionals, as right now so much of that burden is placed on physicians. And it also means we're being proactive and helping people not get sick in the first place.
The NDP have started several approaches to solving these very serious problems. One, they've hired more healthcare professionals, 800 new doctors and 6,300 new nurses last year alone. Then they opened more spots at the UBC Medical School, and for the first time in 50 years, there's going to be a new medical school in Western Canada, so we can grow our own doctors into the future. Also, we understand that we need to update our facilities. We can't be depending on the infrastructure that our parents and our grandparents built. We need to start building our own hospitals for the future. So the NDP is going to be building upgrading or building new 29 new hospitals all around the province. Locally, you all know how we've done fundraising to help people leave the area to go get healthcare services. The NDP has addressed this challenge as well and have created a travel assistance program that provides financial assistance if you need to travel for healthcare. They will cover your travel expenses before they are due for payment, so you do not have to pay out of pocket and wait for a refund.
Thank you. Now all your nerves should be just nicely settled because this is not so bad. Good for you guys. Number 2, we have a lot of hunters and anglers in our valley. When it comes to funding wildlife management and habitat conservation, will your party make a commitment to increase funding, and how will that look? And we will start with Calvin.
Okay, so we would allocate 120 million to fish and wildlife programs over 3 years. We would also strengthen and fund BC's park system and help create new provincial parks in the province. We would continue to work towards the 30 by 30 target, which is very important for conservation in partnership with First Nations. We would immediately enact a species at risk legislation because BC still does not have any law to protect the endangered species in this province. We're one of 2 provinces in Canada that still don't. We would also invest 50 million into a youth climate corps to create jobs for youth in protecting and restoring ecosystems along with other projects. We would also strengthen the rules and oversight around industry, including mining, including establishing an industry levied fund to mitigate the costs of mining pollution and disasters and rehabilitating old mines, and designating certain ecologically sensitive sites off limits to mining.
Our province is home to the richest, most complex and diverse ecosystems in Canada. The NDP government understands it's our responsibility to act urgently to protect them. We have a plan to invest in the protection of biodiverse and critical ecosystems. These plans will be made in collaboration with local stakeholders and communities. The NDP understands that the community forests can be some of the best managed forests. BC will break from outdated conservation models and objectively set and deliver on a science-based target to protect water and natural systems that support our wildlife, our resources, and our outdoor recreation industry. The BC NDP worked with the Green Party to create Clean BC Plan. It was one of the most ambitious climate plans on the continent, and it is working to reduce emissions. We will meet our shared commitment to be protecting the 30% of BC's land and water by 2030 as part of an overall goal to deliver land to use clarity in all parts of our province.
So our official wildlife platform is coming out later this week. But what I can say is that the Conservative Party of BC won't be making wildlife decisions based on social norms. We'll be making that based solely on science. In 2017, a group of people here in the Valley got together through the BC Wildlife Federation, backcountry hunters and anglers, etc., proposing a model which is independent of government. They can receive government grants, but they follow the science as far as how the wildlife numbers are doing and how that is managed. So we will be looking at a model very similar to that, which is outside the reach of government and directed by professionals who know best.
Thank you. Good answers. Now, a question you have not heard. We see a lot of division in politics, but in reality, we all need to work together for the greater good. What is one policy from another party that you see alignment with? So how are you guys going to get along is basically what I want to know. And we are going to start with Andrea. Keep thinking. Come on, you got to like some of us.
We had a debate on Monday night, and Calvin so it's the first time I've heard the Green Party's platform, and I kept on nodding. I'm like, oh, don't nod. But it was kept on nodding. There were so many things in your platform about healthcare and the idea that that we are all healthier when we live in a healthier environment, and we need to make it a priority to ensure, because it would spread down to all of our systems, both our healthcare systems, our education systems, our all of our systems. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember which one it was, but I do know that a lot of the Green Party platform you can't disagree with. I would agree with just about everything he said almost. Yeah.
I also really like Calvin. I mean that. No, honestly, there's a lot about the Green platform, which in principle I do agree with. I think everybody that's running for the Green Party, the BC Greens, their heart is absolutely in the right place. You know, in a healthy democracy, you need all voices at the table. So I do actually really hope that the Greens do get some seats in this provincial election because, again, to make decisions that are best for everybody, you have to hear all perspectives. So, Calvin, my hat's off to you. You're working really hard, and there's lots about all of your platform that I find is very reasonable. So thank you.
I agree with myself, too. Okay. So first thing I guess that comes to mind, and Scott actually pointed this out last night, is both of us are on the same page with banning raw log exports in BC. And I think that could be extended for a lot of things, and that is sort of a change in perspective from traditionally right of center political parties. Originally it was sort of don't interfere with the market at all, and there is sort of a shift to actually prioritizing production and manufacturing in this province, whether that's for logging or so forth. So that's something I can get behind. I do think that we need to encourage producing and manufacturing here. And yeah, I just want to say that we all have the same goals in many ways, but sometimes different ways of achieving them.
Thank you. How do your personal values align with your party? Let's see, Scott. Let's try you first.
Well, that's a really interesting question for me because I've been in two political parties since I started this journey. Most importantly, my political compass through this journey hasn't changed. I don't think anybody in here can say that, you know, there's a political party which 100% aligns with your values, and I'm no different than that. You know, what I can say, and one of the big reasons why I joined the Conservative Party of BC, is because I get to be a constituency MLA before anything else. And that was what's most important to me. I get to make decisions based on what you tell me, not necessarily on party lines. That's what's important to me and the main driver of why I'm actually doing this. So, thank you.
Okay, so what attracts me to the BC Green Party is that we believe policies should be guided by science and by experts. And this seems like a no-brainer, but I do think we really are the only party that practices what we preach into this regard. When it comes to public health policy, it's listening to people that have literally studied this or dedicated their lives studying this to this cause. People like Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry or former coroner Lisa Lapointe. We also, when it comes to climate policy, we listen to climate scientists that say we need to stop expanding fossil fuels, or Nobel Prize winning economists and political science professors that say pricing carbon is a cheap and effective way to reduce carbon pollution. We're also the only party talking about inequality and a windfall tax on companies making over $1 billion a year.
This is such a good question, and it forced me to reflect on why I wanted to be an MLA. I belong to the NDP because we prioritize people over profits, the interests of citizens and communities over the interests of corporations. We make policies that will benefit all British Columbians, and if we don't meet our objectives, we change it. We grow, we learn, we improve, but always with the intent to improve the lives of everyone. You are my neighbors, my friends, my students. I want to do a good job. I want to leave this riding in a better place than I found it, and I'm happy that I'm running with a party that understands that some of the most difficult challenges we're facing are complex and must be dealt with multi-pronged fashion. Our platform includes what plans to build more housing, create more affordable childcare, address the issues in our forests, recognize that people are struggling with affordability, and come up with logical solutions. I can trust that the NDP will use science, reason, and best practices to find solutions. You are my people, and I will put you first, and I know the NDP will too.
Do you think, and this goes to some of the answers you just had, do you think logging practices in BC need to be changed, and how? And Calvin, we'll have you start first.
Okay, so I do think that as a society, we eventually need to come to grips with the fact that we can't keep doing what we are doing in regards to forestry in BC. Companies are literally running out of wood to harvest, and if we truly want to support a sustainable forestry industry into the future, we need to switch to more sustainable practices like selective logging as opposed to clear-cut logging. We do also need to make sure that we are protecting our old growth forests, which is one of the recommendations of the Old Growth Strategic Review. These ecosystems are irreplaceable and won't come back within our lifetimes. There are many benefits to forests beyond resource extraction, flood mitigation, climate mitigation, prevention of soil erosion, biodiversity, and recreation. That's why we would establish ecosystem health as an overarching priority in BC's forests, with timber supply being one of the many benefits. So it's not being anti-logging, but it's looking to ways to make it more sustainable.
One of the reasons I want this job was because of the health and management of our forests. Each summer, we live in anxiety with our bags packed and our gas tanks full. For locals, it seems like the solution is simple. We need to thin the forest out next to our communities and remove the fuel, so the fires will be less intense and give firefighters a chance to control them. We all agree that better management will create healthier forests, wildlife habitat, wildlife corridors, and ensure more sustainable logging industry. The NDP platform states it will support community forests as they recognize local expertise is required in this incredibly complex issue, where so many different stakeholders need to be at the table to make decisions for long-term health and welfare of our forests and forest industries. We know that every cent spent in forest management is an investment in our community and economy. I will be a strong advocate for the increased local control over our forests because I understand the urgency of this issue to our communities.
So I got to keep it quick because there's only a minute. We have a very robust forestry policy with the Conservative Party of BC. So 3 things I want to talk about, as many of you may not be aware, but we still have tens of thousands of hectares that are sprayed aerially with glyphosate or Roundup every single year. We're going to put an immediate end to that because it creates a monoculture regrowth that's terrible for forest fires, terrible for biodiversity, etc. As Calvin touched on, we're also going to look at bringing finished products back to BC after we cut logs. So to keep lumber jobs here in British Columbia instead of exporting so much raw timber. And the last one is very important. We're going to stand up to the Americans who arbitrarily put huge softwood lumber tariffs on BC wood. Mr. Eby said it's not his problem because it's a federal issue. It's not good enough for us. At some point you have to say enough's enough.
And now that challenge of the unknown question. The climate crisis seems to be a lower priority right now to the voters this election cycle. Yet, climate change impacts affects the cost of living and the cost of doing business, which is a priority topic, as you've all mentioned. Can you explain how the 2 issues are linked and how you will tackle them together? The climate crisis seems to be lower, blah, blah, blah. Cost of living and cost of doing business. All right. And guess what? You get to go first. Okay, think on your feet. Let's see.
I win. Like I said earlier, or I guess I haven't said it, that's my next question. I didn't expect it at the beginning. The BC NDP and the put together Clean BC Act with the BC Greens and it was, like I said, one of the most, the strongest, more robust environmental projects in North America, and it is working. Our emissions have, even though our economy has been the strongest growing economy in Canada since 2017, and our population has grown, our emissions have dropped by 5%. So we do know that we can look after the economy and look after our climate at the same time. Our climate at the same time. One does not have to be better than the other.
Well, for us at the Conservative Party, it's pretty simple, and even most recently, the NDP agrees with us that the carbon tax has to go. I spoke with a trucker just outside of Cranbrook a few days ago, who has 3 rigs, and last year he spent over $500,000 in carbon tax only. It's time that we stop punishing people for doing business and living their lives, because it's not changing the climate here in British Columbia. So the carbon tax has to go. I know it's a federal law. As soon as the writ drops in the federal election, which is hopefully soon, we will repeal the carbon tax if we're in government. Thank you.
And Calvin.
Yeah, I think anyone who's been watching the news now knows just how much climate change is costing us right now, and the fact that there are still politicians that are in denial about this is just, it's hard to explain. The signs are going on all around us. Like I said, in 2021, we're paying the economic price, not just the economic price, but the price in human lives. There were over 600 people that died in the heat dome event in BC in 2021. That was BC's deadliest extreme climate disaster. In regards to the carbon price, most people in BC do get rebates back from that because it is designed to be revenue neutral. Actually, what the BC Greens are proposing is right now the levy on industry, there's 65% of emissions are not covered in that. If we increase that to 100%, we could then increase the rebates that people are receiving through the tax.
And here's the last question of the ones that you were given last night. There are several methods available to school districts from the province to incentivize teacher recruitment to remote and rural schools. There are also barriers, including letters of permission for staffing. What plans does your party have to help address the concerns of recruitment and retention of teaching professionals in our rural school district? We'll start with Scott.
Thank you. I happen to know this topic fairly well. There are several rural school districts in British Columbia in a crisis. Staff are on leave, staff are quitting, staff are retiring early, staff morale is at an all-time low. In result of that, we are allowing unqualified teachers into the classroom with our children. Conservative Party of BC is going to audit these school districts across the province that are having foundational problems with recruiting and retaining great educators. That's where it starts for us. Thank you.
So yeah, I agree. Our school system has been chronically underfunded for many years now, and we can improve teacher recruitment and retention by financial support, better compensation, and a streamlined process for educators. We would provide paid final practicums for teachers and early childhood educators, offering financial support during training. We would simplify the certification process for teachers from other provinces or countries to increase recruitment, develop bursaries for teachers who commit to working in remote districts, increase funding for rural and remote teacher education programs, ensure education assistants receive fair compensation and increased hours, and pursue loan forgiveness programs for teachers, educational assistants, and early childhood educators.
Again, this question is hits close to home. We have seen teachers asked to volunteer their time until paperwork can come from other provinces or from other departments even within BC. Our school district must be as committed as the public to ensure teachers and staff that move to this riding to work are welcomed, and everything is done to ensure that they have the paid position when they arrive. However, one of the biggest challenges for new teachers and any employee coming to this area is access to housing, affordable housing. In every community that I have visited in the last 3 weeks, the number one issue that is holding back the growth of businesses and hiring in both our public and private sector is the lack of housing. The BC NDP has a multifaceted plan to ensure we get 300,000 new homes in the next 10 years. We are building 2.5 times more houses per capita than Ontario every year. The NDP has a plan, and we are making progress, and but we do have more to do.
So now we're on to the personal questions that were asked we had over 70 responses to our request for questions. So Calvin, this is for you. The Green Party is focused on developing a knowledge-based economy. What is your plan to support existing economic sectors, including forestry, that are crucial to rural communities, and specifically, how will they positively impact our riding?
Okay, so we want to make sure that the benefits of forestry actually flow to communities and workers and not large corporations. The BC Greens would dedicate 20% of the annual allowable cut towards community forests, which are a great way to transfer tenure from large corporations to communities and First Nations as well. We would also begin a process of tenure reform to redistribute tenures from large corporations. Like I said earlier, we would also end raw log exports to make sure that the jobs and manufacturing associated with that stays in this province. And we would aim to allocate 30 to 50% of the current available volume for value-added production as a short-term goal. Additionally, we would fund a training and upskilling program to support workers finding new job opportunities and investigate opportunities to diversify milling and secondary manufacturing.
And this question is for you, Andrea. As a province, BC has the highest cost of living in Canada. Should your party be re-elected, what will you do to reduce cost of living in BC, and specifically, how will that positively impact our riding?
One of the reasons that I am proud to be running with the NDP is that they acknowledge the struggles that people are having, and they find the solutions that support families where they are when they need it. For example, childcare. Childcare is one of the largest expenses young families have every month. The NDP have created a childcare plan that is growing across the province to ensure all families will have access to $10 a day childcare. When Dave and I had our children, the NDP party had been governing, and they had started a $14 a day childcare plan. When the Rustad Liberals got elected in 2002, they cancelled it, costing my family thousands of dollars. The NDP government will continue to expand the $10 a day childcare program across the province. The Conservatives will cancel it. Another area where the NDP have worked to save you money is on car insurance. We live in rural BC, and most of us need vehicles to get to work or school. The NDP have made changes to ICBC to lower our monthly insurance costs. Every driver pays $500 less a year for car insurance. The Conservatives want to privatize ICBC. All research states this will cost you all more money.
And last question for Scott. Public education is the cornerstone of society. Schools are a place where all students are given the opportunity to learn and grow in an inclusive and supportive environment. How will your party create true diversity and inclusion in schools? And specifically, how will that positively impact our riding?
Thank you for that question, Dee. Well, I've been fortunate enough to be part of some programming that has positively impacted our riding. In fact, there's a young man here in the crowd tonight that was part of that group with me who's working on our campaign team, and that's the District Student Advisory Council. Students from each of the schools meet and hold superintendents and district vice principals to account. Student voices are very important in education, and I would like to see expanded programs around district student advisory councils continue, because it's been put on the back burner, and I think it's a terrible mistake. I've also been part of Selkirk's leadership program in grades 10 to 12, which fosters whole school inclusivity from grades 8 to 12 through programming, social clubs, etc. But it's a local curriculum at Selkirk only. I would love to see that expanded across the riding to include every high school and middle school here in Columbia River Revelstoke.
Keep your hands to yourself. Well, that's the end of the actual questions. So now we get an opportunity to hear closing remarks, of which you each have 2 minutes. And Andrea, we'll be starting with you.
Effective leaders make goals for themselves. As your MLA, I want to, 1, increase the housing supply in all of our communities to increase the affordability of homes and the ability for communities and businesses to grow and allow our children the opportunity to live and work here. 2, I would like to the access to $10 a day childcare to spread throughout our region and take that very heavy financial burden off our young families. 3, I would like our communities to be surrounded in forests that are healthier, more resilient to fire, having incorporated wildlife habitat and corridors where watersheds are protected, and we have spaces for recreation, and we've created a new and emergent industry that will bring more wealth to our area using the fuel we pull out of our forests, creating more jobs from every log. And finally, number 4, I would like to see the expansion of our outdoor recreation industry. Idaho, with a population of 1 million, has a $7 billion year recreation industry. This means an investment in multi-use trails, new campgrounds that are well maintained, stores that sell, fix, and rent bikes, canoe rentals, backcountry guiding. It is a low carbon emitting industry with powerful financial kick. It would enhance the lives of those people who living here and create more diversity, a diverse economy. I can learn, I can communicate, and I will be a very good advocate for our region in Victoria. I am so grateful I had the opportunity to live in such a whole life in this valley. I want all of our children to have the same chance to grow up and thrive as well.
Now, we don't get to debate, but before I give my closing statements, I do want to point out a couple things that my NDP opponent brought forward that aren't accurate. The Conservative Party BC is actually going to expand $10 a day childcare in this province for families that need it. The NDP has brought forward a plan so far with childcare where 90% of folks don't receive it. And those that do, it's through a lottery system. So those that actually really need it don't get it. Second of all, be careful of the housing promises. In 2017, John Horgan, who I respected very much as a leader, promised 114,000 affordable homes. Today, the NDP are 100,000 short of that goal from 2017. As you head to the ballot, folks, you have 2 very important questions to ask yourself. First of all, do I want more of the same, or would I like a different direction? Second of all, with an MLA, do you want somebody who's going to listen, who's going to stand up for you, who's going to pound their fist on the table and jump into a minister's office without an appointment to put their hand up and say, this doesn't work for the people of Columbia River Revelstoke? It's that simple. I've had this for 6 months, and I've been listening to people at door to door from Gold Creek to Revelstoke. And I've heard what people want in an MLA and what they don't. An MLA who pretends to know everything and speaks for you, or an MLA who's willing to listen and speak on your behalf. That's the person I'll be for you. Thank you.
Okay, so one thing in our platform I want to talk about is what's called the well-being framework. So governments have traditionally used GDP as a measure of success in society, but this assumes that all spending is good no matter what the outcome is. So our GDP goes up when more people get sick and go to private healthcare clinics, when we cut down the last of our old growth forests, or when more people have to rebuild their homes after wildfires. And that is a fundamental problem with how we measure success in society. The BC Greens are proposing a British Columbia well-being framework that provides measurement across 4 areas: people, nature, infrastructure, and society. Examples of well-being frameworks include the United Nations Human Development Index, and well-being frameworks are already being used in countries like New Zealand. Another thing I want to touch on is the state of our democracy here in BC and in Canada. Under our first-past-the-post voting system, people are forced to vote for a party that they think has the best chance of defeating the party that they fear the most. That is a flawed democracy. First-past-the-post gives us majority governments with less than 40% of the votes. That's why the BC Greens would implement proportional representation like a lot of other developed countries have already done to make sure every vote matters no matter where you live and who you vote for, because that is how a democracy is supposed to work. I also think it's important that we have people in government that are able to look at the horizon in the future and imagine something better. We at the BC Greens envision a future in BC where we are a global leader in the clean energy economy of the 21st century. A future where public transit is free and accessible to everyone. A society where anyone with a mental illness is able to get help regardless of income, or a universal school food program. This is the type of forward thinking that we need in this province, not leaders who will push us back to the 20th century.
Thank you. It sounded like all three of you did your homework last night. Thank you very much. Before I close this evening, I'd like to just say that we have three candidates here that are running for MLA, but they're actually taking the position of somebody who is here and has represented us for the last 8 years. Could I have Doug Klobuchar stand up, please? And could we get a round of applause for all the work he did? Thank you very much, Doug, and best of luck to all three of you. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and thank these three amazing community and provincial enthusiasts for their strength and fortitude in this process. I can speak from experience. It is not easy. So thank you for stepping forward, and congratulations and best of luck on October 19th. Thank you. And lastly, everybody, October 19th is voting day. Please make sure you go and cast your vote. And Rhiannon?
I just wanted to close this on behalf of the Columbia Valley Chamber of Commerce. We've been organizing this event for many years. One of the many values of the Chamber of Commerce are that we're the only membership-based business advocacy group. This membership-based distinction sets us apart, and if I could be so bold to say is above, the other advocacy groups that are also out there working hard for Canadian businesses. We have a direct relationship to and representation of our local businesses. They can truly help facilitate we can truly help facilitate the communication between the needs of our members, and which are, of course, us local business owners, and our government. Hosting this forum is one way we are working on enabling a pathway between those that potentially represent us and those that are represented. In addition, by providing a platform to allow the candidates to share their message, we are ideally forging relationships and partnerships for the work and advocacy we do on behalf of our membership. Speaking as a business owner and as a financial advisor, I can assure everybody that we are a part of the same ecosystem. And by that I mean eco for economy. So supporting our businesses, which is what we do at the Chamber, and with our governance, all of us are supporting local. Thank you for coming. And let's do one more little clap for Chris, who's on our CVC team, making the things happen. We're gonna do just casual, most of us don't, this is my date night. I don't know about all of you. This was my social time. So some time to chit chat. There will be a warning though to go home, okay? So.